forum tonight for the planning commission, so this is going to be an informational meeting. And so I think we're just going to talk about what I've learned about the bike path, and Nikki and I have discussed it over the course of a couple weeks now too. So if you want to weigh in with your own experiences, you should feel free to.
Hi, Maria. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, hello. Yeah, sorry. I'm in transit, so I will be listening. So I'll try to weigh in if I feel necessary, if it feels necessary.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
So my take on this whole situation is that I feel like when you start asking people about it, they're instantly looking for solutions. And I don't think that's like the first stage of this. It should be figuring out what's actually happening and then deciding whether it's, worth city resources to address the issue.
Could you give me just a little bit of background? Because I know you mentioned that it seems like there's some safety things and maybe some kids have been accosted. Could you just maybe step back?
So that's what I wanted. Yeah. So I think tonight, that's what I was going to say. I was like, I think this should only be about discussing what's happening.
Yeah.
Because I think the reality is that people who are of a certain age, a certain gender, aren't experiencing it the way that others are. And especially if you're a motorist, this is a part of town that you don't even see. So, I mean, I can run through, I have a spreadsheet here of people I've talked to, and they've shared their experiences. So the first one is an 11-year-old boy who bicycles around town. And he was just saying that his parents have explicitly told him not to use it.
Not to use the bike path.
Not to use a bike path. And he bikes everywhere. A girl who is 10, who she would walk with a bunch of other kids. So this is 3 friends that are walking to field hockey practice. Several times men would yell things at them and ask them questions, try to engage them. She said once a 7th grader had something really bad said to her, and she refused to tell me what was said to the 7th. This is a 12-year-old.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
And I'm like an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then after that incident, they stopped walking on the bike path to get to the high school because it was so scary. But again, this is a 12-year-old that apparently had something yelled at her. And then interestingly, I asked after this whole discussion, I was like, wait a second, have you told your parents? And she hadn't. And I was like, do you not want me to tell your parents? And she kind of gave me a look like, I do, so it's like this sense that these kids are doing something wrong by even using the bike path.
Oh.
You know what I mean? That they feel that they've done something wrong.
Like all the parents know that don't go on the bike path or something?
Like everyone knows you don't go on the bike path.
Oh, wow.
A woman in her 30s. This is near the co-op. So those 2 other issues were near the transit center. A woman in her 30s was walking with a friend near the co-op. Men started hollering sexual comments at her, talking about her body, including her ass. So obviously they felt entirely unsafe. Another girl who's 15, near the transit center, walks on the path daily to get to school with her friends, repeatedly harassed. Men start following them, yelling out to ask how old they are, making like kissy faces at them. Again, this is like 14, 15-year-olds. A couple times she said it led to really scary situations, but then they saw that there were teenage boys walking with them, and so they were left alone. So like, even in that situation, you're like, talking to high schoolers, they think that they are adults who can handle this. And you're like, you're not, you're still a child. Another girl.
Describe most of them as the people creating the problems are mostly homeless, just normal. I mean, is it the same group of?
I mean, people don't know.
Okay.
And especially children, like they're not focusing on like what exactly the one guy who was saying this stuff to them looked like to distinguish them between the other.
They're just trying to get away, probably. They're like, let's get the heck out of here.
They're trying to get out of the way.
Yeah, because people will ask me if I'm talking about it with like other folks, like, was it the homeless or was it just somebody who was just
well, unless there's like a tent nearby, you don't really know their situation. And I have had that comment from like several people who are like, I don't know, like I wouldn't be able to like call the police about this because I don't know who it was.
Mhm.
But it's just like a massive people yelling things at them. So I'm not even halfway through my list yet.
Okay, keep going. Yo, keep going.
Of like, so a girl who's 11 also walks and cycles around town, same field hockey. Her parents have explicitly told her not to use the bike path. A woman in her 40s, and this has happened near the high school. So, the bike path extends near the high school. She was walking her dog with a friend, and a cyclist swerved to miss her dog and ended up in like a snowbank. And he started cursing her out, like everything under the book, and then he biked away. But then when he got to the intersection, he stopped, turned around, came back at them, and started screaming at them that if he ever saw them on the bike path again, he was going to kill her and her dog. Another time, a girl, 15, she was walking with her mother. This is near Sarducci's. So again, like think about that other stretch of the bike path. A person jumped out from under that abandoned rail car, that like rusted up rail car, and ran towards them, threatening them.
Oh my gosh.
A woman in her 30s regularly runs on the bike path. This has happened near the transit center. She's started using the train tracks instead of the bike path because it's so unsafe. She's also considered whether she should start carrying mace on her runs to keep her safe. I was going to say another related, a woman did call up the police to ask them about would it be safe for her daughter to walk to school on the bike path. And whoever she spoke to at the police station told her that he wouldn't recommend children using the bike path. Like not in groups and definitely not alone. So a woman in her 30s again, running alone. This happened near the high school. A man was on a bike and seemed to be on drugs. And she actually stopped her run and turned around instead of trying to interact, trying to run past him. This was a significant situation where as a woman leading a tour group in her, I'm guessing 30s or 40s near the Trent Center. And Montpelier Live has been hosting a bunch of river walks. Do you know about this, Mike? Like,
no.
I think it's a weekly walk to kind of to like reconnect the city to the river and talking about like ecological health of the river. And they regularly have like 30 to 50 people in these tour groups. So she says as part of the tour, they won't even go near the bike path. They'll just stay on like the parking lot side to give people space. And a couple weeks ago, a group of people that regularly hang out there approached them and like sat in and listened to her lecture, and then started yelling angrily at the group when no one would give them any donations or anything. And I forget her exact quote was, it's also crude, and I'm sorry that I have to like say it, but I think it gives you the sense of like what people are dealing with. Okay, so he was yelling at them. So you'll stop to listen to this horse shit, but you won't help homeless people. Again, this is like a group of like 50 people who just want to like learn about the river. Moving on. A man in his 40s was using the bike path, and a man approached and physically threatened to punch him. A boy, he goes to the high school. So this started when he was 14, when he started at the high school. So he says men regularly harass him and his friends walking to school. If there's girls with them, they'll get catcalled. I mean, he just acted as if this is just like, this happens every day. He also, a different time, witnessed a man overdosing and had to run to find a police officer to get help. Again, this is a boy who's like 14. A girl who's 14 says she actually doesn't use a bike path at all because of all the bad stories she's heard at school from friends who've had experiences on the bike path. They kind of both said that if like you go to the high school and ask kids there, like they will all tell you similar stories. And then I think I told you like my own situation where I took a bunch of kids on the bike path. And the men started following us, and then like eventually like we were trying to get away. It's like the thing, and everyone's just like trying to get away. And it was me and a bunch of like maybe first graders, like little kids. And by the end, they're just like, well, you're never coming back this way again, are you? So like, and they're like, are you a teacher? What are you? You know, it was just like a very strange, like, let it go, you know? So, I mean, I find it all very troubling that this is just like happening
How
on a
did you
daily
get, how did
basis.
you get your data? Did you put something on Front Porch Forum and ask for stories, or
I
how
just
did you?
asked anybody.
You just asked anybody. You
Like,
just, so this is anecdotal. You went out and you just talked to people and this is the kind of data you were able to get.
yes, I never had someone tell me that they walk or run on the bike path and have not had an issue.
So I walk
You
on the
do?
bike path.
Yeah.
I see the strange people, but they don't bother me. And I've been out there with
Okay.
my wife too, but I mean, I can see where
Right.
I can see where the issues would come up.
But they've never said anything to you.
They don't say anything to me.
They don't say anything. They don't even.
No, no.
No, I guess that makes
I
sense.
just have
I-
that look.
Yeah, but
You have.
so this is what I think is interesting is that I'll have, you know, I mean, I've used the bike path myself with my family and no one has said things to us. But then I'm like, oh, so it's only if I have a 6'2" man with me that they'll leave me alone. And I think that's the reality of it. It's just like, if you are vulnerable, like you will get harassed. But yeah, I didn't hear from any girls who use the bike path and could do it safely.
Yeah.
Girls either completely avoid it, or their parents have told them not to use it, or they have a story to tell.
Yeah. Wow.
And also for like younger women, like in their 30s. So.
And some of your stories, there's groups of people and they're still having, so it's not like groups.
I mean,
keep you safe.
especially, the one group of like the tour group, that was a massive group. But yeah, even with like friends, they're getting bothered. And the thing is that I don't think people use it without a group of friends. Like, they don't think it's safe to go. They won't go there by themselves.
It's such a beautiful resource. So Mike, what can we do as a planning commission? I mean, I know you had mentioned maybe having somebody from the police department. They obviously couldn't get anybody here tonight.
We were also just trying to keep things, as Maria said, we're just trying to get information at this point.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll bring back these topics and stories and see what the input from the enforcement side is, and what they already know about and what they may already be working on and what they can and can't do. I think
I feel like I've seen some Montpelier police on bikes, but I don't know that I've ever
Mm.
actually seen them on the exercise trail.
On bikes, really? I see them on foot. I see them do foot patrol downtown.
He actually mentioned that, I guess they used to be on bikes.
Yeah, they have a bike patrol.
Mhm.
COVID kind of blew everything up, but I know they used to have bikes. They used to do a lot of walking in the downtown. I don't know the full schedule of where things are at this point. So there's obviously the enforcement side, but as Maria sent around a whole bunch of documents on stuff, there's also design things and things we can look at. And I think it's going to come down to a solution that's a combination of things that we will have to look at. And that's why I was asking about, you know, is it just certain, you know, is it just the homeless, or is it everybody,
Right.
or is it this? Because you know, they'll want to try to narrow it down by area. You know, if you get past the co-op, is it not as bad as you're heading out of town, or is it still unsafe out there?
I haven't seen anybody out there. I mean, I think it's people that are homeless or unhoused. There's that, what's the little day center that they can go to on
Stonecutter's Way. Yeah, there's
what is that? It seems like
another way.
it's,
Another
yes,
way.
it seems like there's a little bit of a flow that comes, you know, from there and extends all the way, you know, down to the co-op. There's some benches and stuff, and
yeah.
I see
and
a lot.
I haven't had issues
then I see a
on
lot by
that
the
side.
transit
I've
center.
had people say things on the transit center side,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
just do things that are inappropriate on.
And it's also a little bit trashy over there too. Just say.
Yeah.
So this is as I was saying, I think there's like planning solutions here, because I don't think law enforcement alone can do anything, because like as soon as they sweep an area, mean, 20 minutes later, why wouldn't someone just come back?
Right, they just come back.
Whereas like on the co-op stretch, like I also run on the bike path every day and I don't see people loitering like that. But I think it's like an entirely different environment. Like there's like a lot of foot traffic. There's a lot of car traffic. It's just like a very active part of the city, especially because the co-op is there. So there's like constantly like people like coming in and out and there's businesses there. But that section that is near the transit center just has a lot of like blind turns.
Yeah.
And even I think the berm is there for the river hazard regulations, I'm guessing. And even that kind of creates this, like, it's like a very secluded spot, which I think creates that feeling of unease.
Sense of danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there actually is, it actually is dangerous.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of like creates this, it's almost like a cul-de-sac, you know, like you don't want to go through there because it doesn't feel safe. Like the sight lines are poor. They're often sitting under like tall brush and shaded trees. So they're also kind of like, people are hidden.
Right.
Which also creates that sense of unease. I mean, the one case of like the train car, that's like a very clear.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't know why it's there.
Uh-huh.
But that is like a very clear, there's a clear fix. But it's like a situation where there's like somewhere for somebody to hide.
Yeah.
And they can jump out at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, the whole bike
Whereas-
path right now over there is quite overgrown.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is at the moment.
Yeah. So I think there's stuff like that that can be done, just like regular cleanup. Yeah. I mean, there's also literally trash all over
Yeah.
that part of the bike path. And I'm guessing,
There was a proposal to put up a fence on that side of the bike path that would go along and help to try to keep. They were having the council and the city were having issues with the homeless camping down there, so they were trying to keep them out of that area because we have to then go down and clean everything up, and it's unsafe to go down and clean things up. But they eventually did not vote to spend the money to put the fence up. So there are solutions because yes, I mean, if you're walking on the path in most other areas, you've got the road and you've got open, you can see what's going on around you. As you're going through the transit center, it's you and the brush and a bank.
yeah.
And so you don't have that line of sight of what's going on right beside you.
And a not very active parking lot too. Because I think there's parking all along Stonecutter's Way, which is very active, which I think helps, you know, with like having eyes on the street kind of a thing, like the Jane Jacobs idea. But the parking lot over there isn't very active. I think it's next to the transit center, right? It's connected through the transit
It's
center. You have to like go
Capital.
through the
Yeah,
transit center to get
it's
access
just
to
for
it.
transit center residents.
Oh,
Okay.
the one behind Capitol Plaza?
No, the one behind Capitol Plaza.
Oh,
is a
you're talking about
public. Yeah, the
okay,
one
I
that's
can picture that
Like
one
right
you're
on the-
talking about now. I often cut off the bike path and into the Capitol Plaza parking lot.
That's what everybody says. Yeah. But like
Unless I'm pushing a stroller.
Or
Yeah.
they go onto the train tracks.
Because of that reason, because you think it's just scuzzy and you don't want to walk your family through it. Is that why?
I know. And I mean, we used to use the bike path as just like, because if people aren't using it, then it's like it's a downward spiral, you know? But I don't know if I would use
The
it
other-
alone with the kids at this point.
After the last meeting, I did bike
Did you?
on the bike path
At
at
night?
8 o'clock at night. There's nobody there. It's totally dead. It's totally
Oh,
fine.
interesting.
Yeah.
Was it well lit?
No.
No.
It's not
okay.
lit at all. But I have
It's like
quite
an
a bright
often,
light on the
Like the solution of
bike
these situations is to like
lighting.
have it well lit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple of spots that have been identified in town that the lighting is not good, even off the bike path.
What are the hours that the Good Sam guys host and versus not?
That's only in the winter months from November 1st to about May.
Oh, it's only in the winter.
Yeah, it's only a winter shelter. It's an
Okay.
emergency shelter.
So where are folks going?
They'll have to find places. In some cases, some of them may have been camping. Some of them may have been up at you know, in the motel program, and they might come down during the day and hang
Okay,
out and go
okay.
back up.
It's just a winter. That thing's just, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's where the permanent shelter will come in and will help. If we can get a permanent shelter put in, because then we've got more space to have year round. And you can start working with people. It's difficult to be in just a temporary shelter. The Good Sam will say that.
It's curious whether people would say that the bike path feels safer during those months when Good Samaritan is operating
Oh.
the shelter. I mean, I don't.
I know I used to see a lot of folks up at Hubbard, on the way to Hubbard Park, but I mean, they'd camp out and loiter up in there, but I think a bunch of that state land and they started enforcing.
Right.
You would probably know better than I do, but I think they kind of got chased out.
And there are a number of homeless. We don't want to group everybody into one basket.
Right.
There are a lot of people who are homeless who are just in unfortunate situations, and they, like everybody else, just want to stay safe and find a spot. And in a lot of ways, a lot of times, if somebody's out behind the Capitol or in different places and they're not bothering people, they're generally kind of left alone.
Yeah, right.
Because you need to have a place. You're not bothering anyone. You're not making a
course,
mess.
yeah.
You're not being a problem. So usually those folks, by the fact that they're still there, it's probably a fact that they're not bothering people.
Right.
But as soon as people start bothering folks on the paths, then usually they get cleaned out pretty quick.
Well, I mean, this is my other
But this is public
concern.
property down there that
if this behavior was happening on the corner of Main Street and State Street, like the town would not abide it for a second, that 12-year-olds are getting sexually harassed by men. The fact that it's happening like out of sight to most people, or to most, I wouldn't even say most people, most motorists, is why it's allowed to continue. If this was happening on the State House steps, it would never fly. But the fact that it's happening on a non-motorized path that mostly like children are using to get to high school. And like, I think it comes down to like who we value as society, like what do we value? And this is an area of the city that has been allowed to become unsafe for kids, and people are looking the other way, which is like, it's just so disturbing to me. Especially considering the millions that was invested, to like create this beautiful piece of infrastructure that would safely get children to the high school. And that was part of the reasoning for building it, is like to get kids to high school. And it is currently functioning as like the opposite of getting kids safely to high school. They're being exposed to behaviors and aggression that they otherwise wouldn't get if they were on a city street. So I think the fact that people are, and I don't know that they're homeless. I don't know who these people are.
And it doesn't sound like all of them were. Some of them, the bike rider didn't sound like he was the one who went down and turned around and came back. I mean, there are a couple of instances that weren't.
But it's this aggression that is allowed to continue and is going unchecked because people aren't going to the police about it, because it doesn't rise to, they don't feel it rises to the level of a crime, or it's happening to children who don't want to tell. So the other children that I mentioned, they also don't tell their parents that they've had these experiences on the bike path. So the girl who said that she and her friends get, questioned about how old they are, they're 14. They don't tell their parents what's happening. So it is, it's just like, it is shocking to me that this is happening and everyone's kind of like knows about it. And it's been allowed to continue for, at this point, years in these children's lives, So I don't think the solution is that we need more law enforcement, or if they have a home, then they wouldn't be aggressive to kids. I think it is just like, how do we get people to stop being aggressive on the bike path? Having a shelter isn't
I think
there's something else going on if someone's being aggressive with a child, you know?
Yeah,
right,
and
so-
I'm not a psychiatrist or a
No.
psychologist, so it's outside of my
Like,
planning hat, so.
If they had a shelter to go to at night, I don't. It's not, it's.
Well, and there could be other
hanging out
people
is
there.
the
There could be
problem.
predators there, right? They may not be
Yeah.
homeless. They could just be like, this is the great place to go meet people.
And we can hang out and yell at all.
Well, I mean,
the
it
kids
sounds
we
terrible,
want.
right? But we can pull up a little
No,
matrix and we
for
can find
sure.
all the sex offenders around us. I mean,
Right, this
you
is
could do it.
what I mean. It's the loitering and the hanging out is not the issue.
And they
But
could
loitering-
think
It's
like they're
the
blending
aggression.
in with the homeless people. Nobody will ever even know who I am because I'm here with these other people, right? You
But the
know,
loitering facilitates the ability to loiter there facilitates
I think
the
like the unchecked behavior facilitates the aggression. Like that they know they can get, whoever is doing this knows that they can get away with it.
did you send something around that I didn't see? Mike, it sounded like you had some design ideas or something.
I sent, I think just to you and Art,
Oh,
just to
was
give you an
it?
idea
Oh,
of like
okay.
where I thought,
you're like thinking like bench design or like the
like
like removing
lines.
removing some like brush.
lighting.
Yeah, I can send those, that link, that round.
I definitely think there's something to the idea that if you maintain a space,
Right.
you know, that keep that prevents some sort of downward spiral.
If you can like convince people to use the path again.
I've lived in other places. I don't know that it was a crime reason for it or a feeling of crime, but that there was like a day. My kids are grown, so I don't know. But there was a day like it was like walk your kids to school day, right? And so like something like, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of a grassroots type thing, but it seems like if you had a day like that where everybody was out on
Yeah.
force, right, that would send
So-
a signal. This is an important real estate for us.
Something that was done, that would be done in San Francisco whenever they wanted to protest, like bike advocates would do this when they wanted to protest like an unsafe street. If somebody had like died there or had there been a severe accident, they would physically line the street in yellow shirts to protect the cyclists from cars. And so my husband, who's on the Complete Streets Committee, we have talked about having safe routes to school and just having people out in yellow shirts, like lining the path to school so that kids
Mhm.
can get to school safely.
Mhm.
And to bring awareness that like this currently is not safe for them.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I like that
Bright yellow
idea.
t-shirts.
Well, yeah, and having basically path monitors out there.
But it's supposed, the idea is that it's supposed to show government that they're currently not making something safe. So like, it's to bring awareness, like we're all wearing yellow shirts to bring
Right.
like to bring safety, but then also to bring awareness. So like, this is not
Not good.
a good part of
Yeah.
town. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there are like a bunch of things that you can do. I think the question is like, what does the planning, because it's like multifaceted, it's like law enforcement, it's social services, it's like the Department of Public Works, like there's all these different people that have a hand in this. And then it's also just like straight up urban planning to me. Like what the space looks like, what the built environment looks like. Is there a rusted rail car just sitting in the middle of town?
So who owns the rail car?
I know. So, I'm sure there's a story there because it's Montpelier.
So all of Stonecutter's Way was a rail yard. That's what it was. 4 or 5 lanes wide all the way down. 2 sets of railroads actually came in, one that went out to Chelsea and one that went out to Wells River or something, but now only the one that goes to Barry and it stops.
Mhm.
So the rail car still sits on the old rail property. And so it really falls outside of our stuff, but Guy's Farm and Yard uses it for their storage of
Oh,
materials.
They actually store, it's
Yeah,
used.
it's used. Yep.
I kind of consider it a piece of public art.
I thought it was too.
Somebody else has considered it public art too.
Well, I wonder if there, but this is again, like,
Should we pull back our the public? I mean, I know we haven't gotten to the storyboard part of it and we have plenty of time to comment, but the public safety, should we be talking about you know, the public safety in some of these. There's, you know, we've got all kinds of, this is one space where we've got kids, but we've got all kinds of trail systems and all kinds of things that should we be addressing that somehow in our public safety plan? It was basically written by the police department, right? And
Oh,
and a
right.
consultant. So should we insert something in there talking about that
It's gonna be in the next chapters in October.
in
So
October? Yeah,
that-
yeah.
Those are
Something
the
to-
next
Something
chapters.
to look at.
And transportation is the one we're wrapping up right now, so.
Mhm.
Right.
But I think, yeah, I mean, I think that at some point, this is a topic that goes beyond the planning commission. We can be a part of a bigger picture, I think. But I think this is ultimately going to be something that should be elevated more to the city council and city manager, because it's going to take multiple departments, and anytime you're at that level,
That's the place to coordinate it.
yeah, because it's going to be hard. The planning commission trying to plan for a piece of infrastructure that's owned by Public Works, that's kind of part of the park system,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that is also part of the recreation department. We're already in four departments right there.
But we can be an instigator, right? We can
We can,
send a proposal to city council that says that, you know, we think this is a priority issue that should be looked at by the city council.
yeah,
it's beyond the
certainly
scope of the
something that
planning
goes on
department.
and says
Right.
through our conversations. I mean, we're working on the city plan as you know, through our conversations. This is an issue that we have heard in our experience, and it needs to be elevated and needs to be addressed. And we think there are multiple solutions that need to be looked at, not just enforcement, but that's obviously enforcement will be one piece. If there are problem people there, they're not going to stop. And I'm sure the police would say they don't want us going out and trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
stop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you're wearing a yellow t-shirt.
Yes, right, yellow t-shirt.
It's been sanctioned.
Maria, did you go to the last city council meeting?
No.
I feel like I thought homelessness was a topic at the last the last city council.
Yes, it came up at that one, and it's come up before. Most of it's been targeted on Country Club Road because we had some folks that had been living out there. It hadn't been a problem, so everybody left them to stay out there. But then suddenly it got overwhelmed with a lot of other people coming in who were more problem.
For people that were using recreation out there, that they were
They
having
were
similar issues.
camping, homeless people camping in the back
Okay.
areas in the woods and stuff. And so it wasn't an issue for most of the summer because there were only one or two. But then when a whole bunch of people came in, 10, 12 different groups came in, then there started to be a lot more drugs and fights, and
Yeah.
then there were a lot of arrests. So then the council cleaned it up.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay.
So a lot of the homelessness discussions those were kind of centered on that area.
And they were clearly sleeping there. I think that's the other issue, is that we don't know who is just hanging out in downtown Montpelier.
Yeah, are these folks just hanging out, or are they
Right.
actually homeless, or who are the problem ones? You know, there may be a mix
Yeah.
of homeless and not homeless, and we just don't know who the problem ones are.
What about, have we looked at, like, if we know there's some hot spots, have we looked at putting cameras up or anything like that? Just so that we could
Be a
identify
question for
people?
the police department. They'd have to.
There's some deterrent effect to just knowing that somebody can see exactly who you are if somebody makes a complaint. Because you're right, the 14-year-old girl, I mean, anybody is gonna put their
Anybody.
head down and just get the heck out of there,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
They're
I mean,
not gonna
adults
look
do
to
that,
see who
like-
they are, but they could say, at this time I was walking through, and they can go look and they'll see exactly who it was.
Yeah, I don't stop to have a conversation when I am engaged by them.
Yeah.
It's just a
Let's just keep moving.
polite good afternoon, and we keep moving.
Yeah.
But yes, I was thinking that cameras and just a sign that says, area under video surveillance probably could have some effect as well.
Or like those like see something, say something signs like that have phone numbers that you can call if something happens. I mean, just to get the sense of that 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 someone's looking at this, because it is such an unused part of town. I think Montpelier Live was thinking like if we could have like food trucks in that transit center parking lot, like something to draw people to
If
the
there was more
area.
activity, it would clean it up.
Yeah, and I think that is like 100% true. If
Yeah.
there was activity there,
Yeah.
this would go away.
I love the idea of food trucks.
Yeah.
I love the idea of food
Yeah.
trucks right there.
But the Confluence Park idea is currently dead, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. And I spoke to the woman who was trying to spearhead that, and she thinks it's like very clearly related to the situation on the bike path, that people are like, why would we spend more money there if we already spent all of this money
And
and we've seen
all
how
these
it's
problems.
gone,
Yeah.
like
Mm.
why would we put more money into this? Which is kind of I think a larger fear is that the city gets skittish about spending these money like this on huge infrastructure projects if the projects fail. I mean, the path is currently not used. It's failing. Like people are using the parking lots, they're using the train tracks. Not many people go on that part of the path.
Yeah, I did walk on it this past week, even. I think about, but I've never had
Right.
had to think about something that negative.
But I'm saying like even that like feeling of apprehension itself,
Mhm.
you don't want people to have when they're using public parks. Like that's not good design if people are like have to like brace themselves to like use a public park.
Yeah.
So I mean I would be interested if we had more commission members here to see what they would.
I think we should bring it up again. I would support some kind of letter from this commission to the city council asking them to do some things. Certainly, I think we could add some language to the public safety part of it. I mean, it's such an important resource. I didn't know. I mean, I'm one of the members of the community that wouldn't have
Yeah.
known that this was an issue if you hadn't, brought it up. Although I have seen that little area and it does look a little, it's a little sketchy and dirty, right? Like we
Right.
know that, but you want people to use these resources. You want people to
Yeah.
feel like this is a place to visit or to live, and that's part of it is that we have these great resources.
Yeah, and Montpelier
not
Live
great,
mentioned that too,
you
that
know.
people get dropped off at the transit center from whatever, method of transport they're using. And then their instinct is to use the bike path to get to downtown. And like that's their first
Mhm.
their first view of Montpelier is that,
Yeah.
which is right. Sean.
Well, thanks for bringing it up.
Thanks. I think there's some low hanging fruit on just cleaning the place up is
Cleaning up.
and
Like
mowing-
cutting-
It's the old
cutting
mowing
back.
and cutting things
It's the
back.
old broken windows theory, right? Like
Yeah. It's
if
a
you,
very
if you have broken
classically-
windows, you have crime. If you got overgrown stuff that people can hide under the hedges, they're like, nobody cares about this. Nobody's looking
Right.
at it.
Yeah.
I think that exactly is what it is.
We had I had to stop. I was pushing the stroller and we had to stop and watch them put in the new car chargers because they had a mini excavator over there behind behind the hardware store. And then just even standing there looking at all the stuff growing into the bike path and now that they've got the railroad is working on the
Right.
track and that is now chain link fenced and you're constrained and there's chain link fence on one side and there's all the vegetation growing in from the other.
I do take my photography classes there because it's like a beautiful version of like urban Gothic, It's like-
I'm not sure that that's such an endorsement.
I know. I'm like, guys, do you see the railroad, like the weeds? It's all coming together right here.
Frankenstein's just coming right out of the
Their
bushes.
photos are stunning in that sense, but I don't know if that's
I think you could eliminate the weeds and still get some good urban
like in
Yeah,
the shrubbery too. Like I feel like there's like a lot of like
pictures.
hiding spots.
Yeah.
Or like farther on the bike path where I run, there's nowhere to like there's no shade. There's nowhere to go. And no
So
one
do you head
like towards
towards-
Agway.
yeah
Yeah. And no one hangs out there
no
Right.
because it's hot. There's no shade. It's overgrown, but there's nothing, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hang out,
Yeah.
It is purely a path and it's, I think, widely used. I see people there all the time.
I'm sure the cities, I mean, there used to be, it seems like when we moved here, there was a change to some loitering policy.
Hmm.
I don't know exactly what that was, Mike. Do you remember? There was something and then we kind of freed it up and then there was a lot of panhandling that was going on. I don't know if we pushed back on that, but I mean, we like people to be able to visit and sit on a bench and, drink a cup of coffee or whatever they're going to do. But do you
Right.
remember that background at all, Mike, about the loitering ordinance or anything?
I don't. That's not one that I was able to.
When did you
was a
come on
part of.
board?
2014.
Hmm.
I mean, it may have happened, and
I think
I
it was
just
right
wasn't-
around that. I think it was right around that time. Maybe a little bit after. I mean, I'm not proposing that, but it's just like,
Right.
what do you do? So interesting. You go to different communities, right? And you see they have the same kind of infrastructure and it's beautiful and you don't have the problems. And you just wonder like, okay,
What are they doing?
what are their policies? Like, how do they manage to, because clearly there's people that are affluent that somebody would love to shake down and get some money out of, but they don't have the same problems. And why is that? I don't
Mhm.
know.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
where's
Aaron.
Aaron?
He has joined us. We have a quorum.
Quorum now.
Here I was running through my security protocols.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
I'm sorry for being late. I'm actually in Montana, and I forgot that it was 2 hours
Holy
difference
cow.
as opposed to 1. So
Oh my
here I
God.
am.
So
I don't know if we need to go and jump into all the other stuff
now that we have a quorum.
that we have before him, but we can.
Is there anything that you need to get done, Mike, since we have Aaron here, or can it all wait? What do you think?
No, I mean, if people want to
Approved
take
minutes.
take a look at what I sent out on the energy notes this afternoon, that would be.
I looked at it. I would just say I'm very unqualified. Maybe you guys have better background.
I don't have a
Yeah, it
background
was-
in energy.
Yeah, so we got a lot of comments, and I went through and tried to. So we wrote energy was one of the earlier chapters or earlier ones that we did, maybe 2018, 2019. They did a big planning project in 2021. So a lot of the stuff, and then we didn't update the chapter. So they rightly went through and said that you're missing all the stuff. So I went through, read the new plan, and tried to go back to the same format. They had sent some comments along, which would have been about added a couple more goals. I know we have a goal of trying to minimize the number of goals. So the first 3 goals that are of the 6 talk about the municipal, and the next 3 talk about the community, because we have a 2030 goal of being net zero, and a 2050 goal to be net zero for the community. So 2030 is to be government, city hall, all these buildings would be net zero. And then the other ones are about how do we make the community net zero by 2050. So that's why we've got 6, but they would have had a lot more if we kind of followed theirs. That's why I squished them down. But the idea was really just to start looking at if it looks okay, and for folks who've kind of been through this before, if it looks like we're heading in the right direction, I can go and start pulling all these together. And then I laid out strategies based on those goals.
I will say that I read it all and I didn't have any problems with any of it, but I also felt like somebody else should be looking at this that isn't me.
Yeah, I did send it to the chair and vice chair of MEAC to go and take a peek at and get their input as well. And I'm going to go to the MEAC committee in October, but I kind of need to pull it together. So I figured if we had enough people and people had thoughts, you can send them to me. You don't have to go over it tonight, but if you've got thoughts, if you think, some of these kind of look okay, it's really rough. I mean, it's just putting things in a couple of boxes So you've got goals 1 through 6, and then strategies for goal 1, strategies for goal 2. And those are mostly based on those reports. So I think it all looks good.
Do we feel good enough to tell Mike to keep working on it?
Well, I have a question, Mike. Sorry. Yeah, no. So goal number 2, it says reduce climate impacts of fossil fuel use in schools and municipalities. Is it just reduce fossil fuel use? I don't understand why the climate impacts of is in there.
Yeah, that's true. And I was trying to insert, and I'll go and see if their wording was, if they were talking about the climate impacts, because it might just be reduce fossil fuel use in schools and municipal facilities through conversion to non-fossil fuels and other measures.
Or like reduce climate impacts by reducing fossil fuel use in schools.
Yep. And we might be able to just emphasize climate impacts in the storyboard portion, because really when we get to the goals, it may just be,
I think everybody knows why we're reducing
yeah,
fossil fuel
why
use.
we're doing that. That's from the storyboard.
And then the third goal, is there, and you just said 2030, is there like a date attached to that, or is that just all vehicles used by schools? Is there a goal?
All 3, 1, 2, and 3 are all supposed to be reaching net zero. It's actually in the aspiration, which I didn't write. So aspiration will remain the same. The aspiration says we'll be 2030 net zero by 2030.
That's the city.
The city.
Yeah.
City government. And then Montpelier as a whole will be net zero by 2050. So that's working with property owners to weatherize their houses and convert from oil heat to some other non-fossil fuel heat, those types of things. How do we, it's much easier to do it for the city government, because we are in, we're kind of in, we can tell ourselves what to do. It's more difficult to go and tell community members. Everybody may want to do it, but they may not be able to afford it.
Right.
Right. So yeah, so goal number 6 then. I guess it's fine. It's fine. But obviously a lot of the stuff in here, doing this, having the city do things is within our control, and having individuals do them is very much outside of
Right.
our control, as it should be. But I think it's fine that some of these things, they're good goals to have, good aspirations to have. And I wonder, at least in the near term, we're going to run into a like preferred contractor type situation where we realize that, oh man, we need to actually kind of pause this requirement for the city.
So some of the questions some of the things that MEAC will bring up is like, well, we could have different energy standards. If you're building something new, then you have to meet a higher energy standard, and we could adopt that as an ordinance. Now that affects all new buildings, and that doesn't affect the existing, but it helps to make sure new buildings get built to certain codes. And there may be,
Well, you could do things with
there
rent.
may be
People that are
incentives
have rental properties have to conform by a certain date. I mean, there's some enforcement mechanisms that you could put into play.
Yeah, if there was the political muscle to do it, there are different things. If the city wanted to raise funds to do a revolving loan fund where maybe it costs $30,000 to weatherize a house. Well, we could loan you the $30,000, 0%, and then that goes as a mortgage on your property. And when you sell your property, you give us the money back and we can loan it to somebody else. But of course, we need to raise all that money first.
Mhm.
So where do we get that seed money to start that type of revolving loan fund? There's small things, there are people that do window inserts, and there are people that do different smaller things. But I think if we're going to reach net zero, it's going to be more than just weatherizing storm windows. It's going to be, how do we actually deep weatherize houses to get them, maybe not necessarily to net zero, but at least better than they were. You know, I like to use as an example, the house I had lived in before I moved was in East Hardwick. And when we bought it, it had used 900 gallons of fuel oil to heat. When I sold it, it wasn't using any fuel oil. It would, if you used the wood stove, it would use a quart of wood. If you use the oil stove, it would use, if you still use the furnace, it would use about 75 gallons a year.
Wow,
So
you did a good job.
yeah, so you can weatherize houses really, really well to really knock a lot of that out. And I've got a lot of work to do in my new house. lot of work to do. But yeah, but those are the types of investments that if everybody did it, you could dramatically decrease the amount of home heating fuel that is being used to heat the houses. That doesn't get cars off the road, but it does get heating fuel. And that's probably the easiest one for the city to try to tackle, is how do we work with people to get their houses to be more deep weatherized? What are the programs that we could do to help that happen? There's a lot of incentives through Efficiency Vermont, but it's not enough to get everybody to do it. So what can we do that helps get us over the limit, over that line? But those are the things that's what we rely on the MEAC to try to come up with. How do we do that? And they've focused on the 2030, rightfully so. That's the deadline that's coming up the quickest. And let's figure out how we can do city government. And then that's why I think one of the big ones for them is to come up with a 2050 plan. There are a lot of ideas. Maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. At some point, MEAC has to hire a consultant and come up with a 2050 plan, just like they did for their 2030 plan, and really lay it out and says, these are the best ways to get efficiency work done. That's the first goal. 4 is how do we make houses more efficient? Energy efficiency, weatherization, group, strategy 5, how do we get people to have their houses off fossil fuel? So you're not cooking with gas, you're not heating with oil, you're still going to need heat. So maybe they're heat pumps, maybe that's wood chip or pellet stoves. Maybe you're on district heat in some cases if you're a commercial building in the downtown. And then 6 is how do we get people out of their cars, or how do we get people to buy electric cars? It's going to be harder for us. Burlington actually offers incentives. They have their own electric department, and they match, I think, some of the state incentives. So if you want to buy an electric car, Burlington, but that's how they do it.
Aaron's
Hey,
got a
Aaron.
hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I just have 2 quick questions. Number one is, Mike, it sounded like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like you've given this to MEAC for some feedback. And if that's the case, when do you expect that feedback? Because I think I might have some stuff to add, but not right now.
Yeah, if you got stuff to email at some point, I'm trying not to make this be 50 more iterations. So I'm trying to work with the key people, Kate and the chair, whose name escapes me right now. And we're going to get their comments, get some of your comments, just so that when I put it all together into a new draft, I will take that to them like October 17th to the whole of MEAC. And then you'll get some comments back. So probably in November, we'll be able to have a conversation of what the final draft looks like.
Okay, perfect. And then the second question is, in the strategy 6 for the development of the 2050 plan, it's add EV charge. It's the zoning to allow for EV chargers without permits. What's the permitting structure now?
So currently, actually, that was really just to go through and point out the fact that EV chargers don't need permits. So right now, we actually removed EV chargers as a permit item. As long as the EV charger is associated with a permitted parking space, then it doesn't need a permit.
Okay. So this is the status quo.
Yep, this is the status quo.
All right.
So yeah,
All right.
sometimes we talk about strategy. Some of it is just to continue what we're doing, and sometimes we want to let people know what it is we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't aware of any permitting requirements. That's why I asked. So thank you.
Yep.
What is a home labeling ordinance?
I've got to get the exact name of it. There is a requirement that was passed. I'm not sure personally if I think it's actually working or worthwhile. Certainly when I bought my house, I didn't get any information on it. So they, few years back, there was a request in that if we required sellers of homes to give a energy efficiency report, that it would encourage and provide information to buyers as to the energy efficiency, and buyers will then shop around for the best, most energy efficient home, and it will encourage sellers to make energy improvements to their home.
Assumes there's
before
any
selling them.
houses to buy.
Truth is, in my opinion, is I thought this was one, whatever the expression is for one thing too cute or whatever. It's just it's just go after the issue and don't try being fluffy around the edges and go through and tell real estate agents they have to go and post labels as to how efficient the house is. And there was a specific program that you had to go through. Like I said, I just bought a house. I never saw any report. I never asked for it. I had a house that I could afford that was available, and I put a bid on it. And
If a house has energy improvements done to it, you will hear about it.
yeah, and this one had no energy efficiency to it at all, and I still paid asking price. So
That's actually pretty lucky. I
Yeah,
think,
you only
to-
paid asking price?
yeah,
No
So-
bidding war?
no, well, it was at the top of my thing. I told my agent, I'm like, that's it. That's all we can afford. And we were very happy to see that we won. So,
Wow.
but yeah, that's what the home labeling ordinance is. There's enforcement pieces and other pieces that were kind of waived and tabled and put off to the side. And I don't know how much actual enforcement goes into it. So, but it is an actual thing that is on the book. So
It
we will
exists.
describe it. It does exist.
Okay. Interesting. Fascinating.
I do think I sold some condos, and I do think I had to have some report, and they were brand new. I thought it was bizarre.
No, that's because you crossed your T's
yes.
and dot your I's, Gabe.
I probably had somebody coming from the city that was going to inspect it or something. So I had this, I know I had a report, but yeah, I wouldn't be
It's
surprised that some people don't.
It's possible if there was some, if you had a real estate agent who just knew the rule existed, they may do it.
I might
Other
have had a real
agents-
estate agent that might have known something about the way the city operated.
It might have felt it's in their best interest to
Might.
make sure that they followed the rules that had been passed.
Might happen.
So, and my real estate agent did not. I'm sure my real estate agent knew about it and chose not to do it anyways. So, but
Worried that you would shop around?
no. He used to work for me, so I knew his opinion on the home labeling ordinance. So it didn't surprise me if he didn't follow it. But so yeah, that's, if people have thoughts or comments, let me know. Like I said, most of this was not to really get into a big debate about the details of it, and more just, if I have to now turn, this pretty piece of paper into that nice board that's out on the wall.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to put in that much effort, if anybody had thoughts at the start of, I like the way it was done before, but
No, you should go ahead.
I will go ahead and make up another draft, basically another first draft, and I'll run it by MEAC, and I'll run it back to you guys in November, and we'll hopefully get it finalized.
Then do you want to put that back out then for public input, or wait
That
for
will
the
be up to you guys.
Okay.
Let's see how that
So
goes.
do you
Well, when you guys see it, I don't think you have to make the decision now. But
I imagine we spent a bunch of money having a consultant work on some things, right?
But this is this is also going to carry over to the storyboard then as well.
yeah, there'll be storyboard changes there.
So we should put it back out there.
There is eventually going to be a full public hearing. So yes, we will eventually obviously have to go back out. The question is, do we go back out for one more round before? And that may be something that when we get to the end, as I said, we're going to go through 12 chapters. That was our goal, was get through all 12 chapters. We'll see where we're at.
Right.
And
What's our timeline, Mike? When do we think we're going to get through all of them?
it was supposed to be this fall, but we've kind of gotten ourselves a little, we didn't meet in August, and
we're going to make it.
I'm gonna,
The new guy.
We're gonna make it. We got all of
but we're
October
doing
and
really
November.
well for the first 6. The only one that really seems is really the energy one. That's the only one that seems to be needing
Well, that got
more work. But
whole
we knew this
rewrite.
when we did this. We're gonna do 12,
Mhm.
and after we do 12, everyone's like, well, it's not ready, it's not ready, it's not ready. So, well, we're gonna do 12. We're gonna end up with like 2 or 3 that people want to talk more about.
Mm.
And for the most part, I think we've done our first 6, and we've have housing that needs a little more conversation, but I actually think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty close. And energy that needed a lot more work. Now we're starting our next 3 in the next meeting, and then we'll figure that out, which we actually have to talk a little bit about the next meeting,
Right.
because that lands on Columbus Day or
Oh,
Indigenous
yes.
Persons Day. And I don't know if we want to push that to Tuesday or if we want to just meet on that Monday. I don't know what everyone's schedule looks like.
Is it a city holiday? Well,
It is a city holiday,
so you won't be working.
but I could, unfortunately, I have another meeting on Tuesday night. So it kind
Okay.
of pushes me in a pinch, but if everybody said they were out, then that's great. I'll bump my other meeting on Tuesday.
I could probably make it.
But if everyone was like, nah, we're not doing anything anyways, but it is.
I have Tuesday conflicts, so I could
You have a Tuesday conflict too?
I could make it on Monday.
Okay. I think I could make it on
I
Monday.
don't know. I usually can make it, but I also know if my wife had the day off, then we might like to do something, but we'll figure it out.
But it's also going to be a public input session.
It's also a public
Yeah,
input
so
session.
we probably can't
Oh,
do it
yeah, I
as
would.
a public
There's probably a lot of
input
people
session
taking a
though.
3-day
I know.
weekend.
Can we push
Still-
it to Wednesday? If it's just a public input?
Let me take a look. How are people on Thursdays?
I have a standing.
You have a standing
I always
Thursdays?
have a conflict on Thursdays.
Okay,
Mm.
so
So I-
Wednesdays would be probably
But
this.
but you can have a quorum without me, so
I think it's more the public if they're not here on,
Yeah, I'll have to see if it's a council night. I don't know
okay.
when council is. They kind of bump around a little bit. So if it's a council night, then Wednesday probably won't work.
Okay.
That's why I was asking about Thursday as a fallback, just in case.
I think I
Yeah.
could do
I
that.
can normally do a
do-
Wednesday and I can't do a Thursday, but I think you've done Thursdays before and had enough members show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I coach Tuesday, Thursdays.
Tuesday, Thursdays. Okay, so that's 2 people out on Thursdays, and we're already 2 people down. So that kind of,
Have there been any applications to be on the commission?
I have to see. So
I'm telling people.
Brian isn't coming
Yeah.
back. So Brian,
I know.
yeah. So, his term is going to be up as well. So we will now have 2 seats to fill. But Gabe is coming back and Maria is coming back. So we've got 2 of the 4.
I submitted my application.
Oh, that's right. And Sean, because
Technically,
you were on
I'm
your seat or
wrapping up.
something, or you came in mid-year.
Yeah, I'm wrapping up.
Oh, okay.
yep, and technically Carlton's seat is a 1-year seat. So we have a 1-year seat and a 2-year seat.
Oh.
That's
Okay.
open.
What did I apply for? Am I going into a 2-year or a 1-year?
This will be going into a 2-year seat.
Okay.
Yep. Because you're filling your existing.
Okay, so this is
So you'll
Wednesday.
just coordinate offline with Ariana and
Yeah,
Maria
we'll
to
coordinate
pick a
and let
date?
everybody know what the date is,
Okay.
but doesn't sound like Monday Doesn't sound like Tuesday, doesn't sound like Thursday. We'll see if Wednesday works.
And this is the 9th and 10th that we're discussing, October 9th and 10th, or no,
14th?
later.
Is it farther?
Next Monday is.
Monday,
Oh, I see. It's on
7th
every
and
other
14th.
Monday.
Yeah,
It is
we
the
are.
second Monday.
It's the second and fourth. So we are the 14th and 28th.
16th and 17th is what we're discussing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll see if the 16th is a council meeting or not. I don't think it is, so 16th might work. Because they are also second and fourth.
Mhm.
So usually they are the same week that we are, except that the first is on Tuesday. So they're meeting the 9th and 23rd.
Okay.
So unless they've moved it on me, but we'll find out. And I will let you guys know. And that's it for my
And we
My
probably
turn.
don't need to adjourn because we never really opened, right?
right.
I have a question for you guys about the bike path though. I mean, you mentioned like opening up to like front porch forum, which I was scared to do. 'Cause I was like worried about like the avalanche of
There would have been
Patients
a
that
lot
might
of
come
people
in?
here.
I think it sounds like you have enough
okay.
information anecdotally for us to, first of all, make an additional input into the public safety plan. And then second of all, to write something
for city
that I would
council.
endorse, like if you drafted something, I would endorse it
Okay.
and send it, through Mike to the city council, asking them to, have a hearing on it or something.
And I'll bring it up with the leadership team, and the leadership team at the city are all the department heads. So we meet at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, to talk about issues. And it may just be something that we find out from them what they think is a good approach. I mean, we've got everybody from the Community Justice Center who's on the leadership team, to the rec director, to the parks director, to the police, to the fire. So
But
they may have some ideas of what, maybe they want to sponsor a meeting or host a meeting that is a more of a public conversation about it.
that's what I was gonna say, I think everyone knows it's an issue. Like, I think everybody in Montpelier knows that this is a part of town that is unsafe. But I think it's when you hear like the individual stories that you get a sense of like how dangerous it potentially is. And so even just,
And there's not a solution
So,
on the horizon.
right,
So
like it's
how
not
do
only
we
city
get a
councils, you're like,
solution?
wait, what? People are congregating on the bike path? But I think it's like once they hear those like actual stories of what people are having to put up with, that it can change minds. So maybe it's a public meeting, like that, like you're saying, or in the
We
letter
can
that
put
we
it as
write.
on an
Yeah.
agenda for next steps.
Okay.
And I'll see what the leadership team wants to, how they want it, what they suggest doing. Because this is going to be bigger than just the planning department or whoever. So, and it may be an issue that just the manager's office has to go and take on, to go through and say, this is a bigger topic. And they just had a big issue. They were addressing it with the legislature and with the administration about what to do with the homeless. They need shelter. Where do we shelter them? Where do they go to get shelter if they're not allowed on state land, not allowed on city land? They've got to be somewhere.
Right.
So what's the solution? And we're going to have this type of conversation as well. What do we do in this situation when things are unsafe?
Yeah, I mean, one of the mothers said to me, she's like, do I have to wait does the kid have to be raped before the city will do something
It's
about that?
terrible.
And it's kind of like, and the fact that kids are scared to tell adults what's happening, I think is,
You can see
So
how
disturbing.
terrible could happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that our concerns are also wrapped in this kind of like, the concern isn't just like this generic, like, it's kind of sketchy. Like the concern is that we've talked to people and it's a really dangerous situation. I mean,
I
I'm
mean,
probably
you
gonna
could
keep
probably
asking
even,
everyone.
you could probably even format what you have as a spreadsheet as
Yeah,
an
I do have it.
attachment, and like, we could all sign the cover letter. Like, I would support that. You've done interviews, right? Like, you've talked to people, here's anecdotal data. Somebody else can go out, the police department can go out and do their own if they want to do it. But it sounds like if you were able to do this without a
Right.
lot of like detective work, right? You just talk to some people.
Just
That's like,
asking like, I
yeah,
mean, like at soccer games, just like, oh, hey, you take the bike path?
right.
I literally have like asked everybody I know.
Yeah. I would totally support doing something formal.
Okay, I mean, should we push it off to the next meeting to like formally
Well, I
agree to
think
do this?
somebody probably needs to draft something, right?
Right.
Yeah, if you have something to
So
present
something
at
drafted by the next meeting.
meeting, we can,
Okay.
yeah, you just send it to us beforehand. We'll,
Yeah, we could put it as
Read
the
it
next
and-
steps item on the agenda.
Thank you guys for listening to it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
That's
it's like sticking
terrible.
your head out.
well,
It is, yeah.
it's also something that I don't know, just that yeah, just right. It's my privilege that I get to brush it off a little bit,
Mm,
even though it's not fun. But I don't. Well, I just can brush it off. But obviously,
it is scary,
we need to not brush it off.
right?
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you
Yep.
guys. Thanks, Mike.
All
So
right.
I guess we'll see you whenever we see you.
Yeah, whenever. We'll let everybody know when the next meeting is. All right.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good trip, Aaron.
Thanks, everybody.